An illegal immigrant now under arrest and charged with murder in New York City. Police say the suspect set a woman on fire on the subway in Brooklyn and watched her burn. Her horrifying death was caught on video. The Brooklyn district attorney prosecuting the case said this gruesome and senseless act of violence against a vulnerable woman will be met with the most serious consequences. Fox confirmed that the 33-year-old suspect entered the country illegally in Arizona back in June of 2018. Just days later, he was removed from the country, deported, and returned to Guatemala. It's unclear when he re-entered the United States. No one knows. Former acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf says it speaks to a larger problem.
He obviously came back in as a gotaway, and there's been over 2.5 million gotaways under the last 4 years because Border Patrol agents aren't out there on the line patrolling the border. Instead, they're in Border Patrol facilities facilitating and processing illegal aliens.
The New York Post cover with this headline, up in flames. It also calls out New York Governor Kathy Hochul. On Sunday, the same day that the crime was committed, some 8 hours later, she took a victory lap, boasting about lower subway crime rates. New York Democratic Congresswoman Richie Torres posted, has there ever been a more tone-deaf governor in the history of New York? And incoming Border Czar Tom Homan with this.
She has a green light law. ICE and CBP can't even work with local law enforcement. So Governor Hochul, shame on you. There's nothing you can say that's going to make this right in New York.
Congresswoman Claudia Tenney of New York with us now. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us. So much about this case is just outrageous.
Yes, it just gets more outrageous every day. You know, things are going to continue to happen until we have a new administration that actually deals with this crisis, the border crisis. President Trump has promised to do that, as has Tom Homan. And he mentioned the green light law, which was put in place actually by Governor Cuomo, and they refused to repeal it, not to mention the sanctuary cities. And this Guatemalan, who was an illegal immigrant with a criminal record, who was deported, was found at the Days Inn Hotel on 36th Street just last year. So he's been here, you know, getting food and shelter and all the accommodations, probably a cell phone, access to health care, and he probably would have been given some kind of tuition assistance as an illegal immigrant based on New York's laws. So Kathy Hochul is doing nothing about this. And by the way, she recently did a victory lap saying how safe it is to ride on New York City subways. Now, who would you rather have? Would you rather have this guy running around setting, innocent women on fire, or a former Marine, Daniel Penny, who was saving people, seeing a violent person and protecting lives? And thankfully, he was, found innocent by a jury of his peers. But this is the crisis that we face in New York. And it's not just New York City. It's all over New York because these laws apply all over New York. It is a sanctuary state. As Tom Homan said, the green light law prohibits police officers and different law enforcement agencies from working together, the exact opposite of what the 9/11 Commission, a bipartisan commission, recommended after 9/11 to prevent any type of terrorist act or these types of acts coming in. So when you have people here illegally and you allow them to be gotaways and have no vetting, this is sadly what the American people get, and it's really tragic.
Congresswoman, to the point you made a moment ago about Daniel Penny, we noted, and it has been noted on several of our programs, that there were a number of people who just kind of stood by and watched what was happening. Do you think that's potentially a Penny effect? That people, after what happened to him, don't want to get involved?
Well, it certainly has a chilling effect. I don't know if that's a little bit of New York City, or people don't feel confident enough to help themselves. But that's why we have to have dangerous people out of the way. That's the major role of government, is to keep us safe in our streets and our subways as we have a free society. And that's why we have police. And that's why, this is all of the fallout from the defund police movement started by AOC and others. This is what you get. You get unsafe streets, unsafe cities, and demoralizing the police and making people think they're the enemy and relying on good Samaritans like Daniel Penny is not the answer. And that's not the solution. Look, I think that this is definitely, as you say, having a chilling effect.
Right. All right. Back to the issue of sanctuary cities. A conservative legal group is putting sanctuaries on notice ahead of an expected mass deportation by the incoming Trump administration. America First Legal says it has notified nearly 250 officials in jurisdictions which limit or forbid local law enforcement cooperation with ICE agents. Some New York leaders are among those 250. One of the organization's senior vice presidents tells Fox News the left-wing politicians who create and run them and those who support them put our citizens at risk, undermine our Constitution, and dangerously erode the rule of law. It's one thing for a conservative watchdog organization to put folks on notice, but Tom Homan, the incoming border czar who's got authority here, says if anybody stands in the way of ICE removal process when it comes to criminal illegal aliens, he's going to prosecute those people.
I think that's an excellent idea, not to mention we should be defunding these cities that are perpetuating sanctuary city laws. Sanctuary city laws are defiance of law. That is not upholding the rule of law. We can't have municipalities and even some college campuses actually engaging in undermining and flaunting our laws. That's how you have a society. That's what our Constitution is based on, is upholding the rule of law and making sure that those things are enforced. Tom Homan is going to enforce that. These jurisdictions and these people who are attempting to obstruct the deportation of people who are here illegally should be held accountable, and they should be prosecuted.
And then there's this issue, Congresswoman, a lot of outrage over President Biden's last-minute move to spare federal death row inmates after record commutations granted just this month, 37 out of 40 people who were on death row. But Progressive Squad member Ayanna Pressley is singing the president's praises. Listen to this.
State-sanctioned murder is not justice. And today, what President Biden did demonstrated moral leadership, compassionate leadership, informed by his own faith, and a position that he's held for a very long time. But wherever you fall on the issue of the death penalty, one thing is for sure, is that whether or not people think it's fair or unfair, it has not been applied fairly. It has had a disparate impact on low-income people, Black people, and other marginalized persons.
Critics are pointing to the victims of some of these inmates. One killed 12-year-old Lexis Roberts in Louisiana in 2010. Another took the lives of 8-year-old Laura Hobbs and 9-year-old Crystal Tobias near Chicago in 2005. That same person later strangled 20-year-old naval officer Amanda Snell. I spoke with former prosecutor Senator Eric Schmidt yesterday on The Focus. Listen to what he said.
I can only imagine the grief and the shock that these families are experiencing as they get ready for the holidays, remembering the loved ones that were lost and now having to deal with this sort of insult to injury. The outrage is real. It's justified. Joe Biden, on his way out, is again cementing his status as one of our worst presidents.
Biden did not commute sentences for 3 killers, one who murdered Jewish congregants at a synagogue, another who killed African-American worshipers at a church in Charleston, and the Boston Marathon bomber. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes Mr. Biden's inconsistent conscience is an affront to the victims, and it has not made the justice system better or the country safer. Congresswoman, Biden is showing mercy to these killers, but they showed none to their victims. In particular, Lexis Roberts, 12 years old, who watched as the killer killed her mother and then shot her 4 times and slashed her throat.
Yeah, these are heinous crimes that deserve the death penalty. And I understand the sentiment that people don't feel comfortable having the government put someone to death unless it's absolutely proven. And I think that's a good sentiment. But remember, this Ayanna Pressley, I'm sure she supports late-term abortion. So the sanctity of life is not something that she holds dear to innocent children in the womb. And late-term abortion is the rule of law in New York State and across many of the, really liberal states in the country. And it's kind of incidentally when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade with the Dobbs decision, what they actually did was leave it up to the states. It just said it's a state issue, and you're going to have a while we have this disparate interpretation. Some states are really extreme, like New York, and others are going to have a little bit more of a similar law to Roe versus Wade originally. But here, this is the problem. When you have the Biden administration, Biden claims it's his Catholic faith. How do you spare some and not others just because they look like they were politically motivated? If you're going to believe in the death penalty or not believe in the death penalty, you have to be consistent. And obviously, Joe Biden was not consistent in this. And I hate to say this, but it's probably some Marxist-leaning Democrats, Obama holdovers that are staffers, because we know that Joe Biden is basically checked out and is not even really doing the work in the White House, which is another whole other case for another show, the tragedy of that situation. But also, why is this guy still the president of the United States when he's incapable of committing, doing this work? And remember something, President Trump and even President Bush, there were a couple hundred pardons. Obama issued a number, 8,000 pardons under Joe Biden, a one-term president with 8,000 pardons. That's incredible. And so many of them are so heinous and so inappropriate on this Christmas Eve, which is a time of joy and light. So this is just, another reprehensible act as he walks out the door.
Yeah, a number of people have wondered how much Joe Biden actually had to do with this, or whether it was staffers who were really at the helm. I just want to put a button on this, Congresswoman, with this. Don't need a reaction from it, because this morning the president-elect, Donald Trump, posted his reaction to Biden's commutations. He said, quote, "When you hear the facts of each, you won't believe that Biden did this. Makes no sense. Relatives and friends are further devastated." Trump added, "As soon as I am inaugurated, I will direct the Justice Department to vigorously pursue the death penalty to protect American families and children from violent rapists, murderers, and monsters. We will be a nation of law and order again." Congresswoman, we thank you for being with us. Not a conversation that lends itself to wishing you a Merry Christmas, but I do wish the best for you and your family on this holiday season.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas to you and all the viewers.
Thank you, you too.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.